Now I want to talk about sensory memory, the first of the three major stages. It's defined in the book as a perceptual store in the information processing system that registers information and holds it very briefly. Now we want to know something about the limits of this system, and one of the first people to try to figure out what the limits were was a man named Sperling, and he had a particular experiment that's pretty famous. In this, he flashed something up in front of subjects, in front of the people who were in the experiment, using what he called the whole report method. In other words, he flashed this or something similar to this up for about 50 milliseconds, and he asked the subjects then to recall the whole thing. Most people could recall about 3 or 4 letters. That's about 35% accuracy rate. So he thought, maybe there's a way I can capture this differently, and then he developed the partial report method. Basically, he flashed the same thing up 50 milliseconds, and then right after it flashed up, within less than a second, the subjects heard a tone. It was either a high tone or a medium tone or a low tone. These were cues that they were to quickly recall what had been in the upper level if it was the high tone they heard. If they heard a medium tone, they were to quickly recall the letters in the middle, and if they heard a low tone, they would quickly recall the letters in the lower row. The sequence went something like this. There was a period called fixation where it was just a baseline, and then they saw the letter array. It would be either 3 or 4 in his experiments. He did both, and they saw this for about 50 milliseconds. Then there was a blank field for just a second, actually less than a second, and then they heard the tone. If it was a high tone, remember they had to recall this. If it was a medium tone, the middle row. If it was a low tone, they had to recall, and then they would do their report. And what he found was that most people had around a 75% accuracy rate. Now remember, this tone happened after the letter array was flashed and they saw it, and then it disappeared. So they didn't get this cue before. They didn't get a signal prior to the stimulus to help them focus. It was less than a second after. It was a few milliseconds after. What this demonstrates is that actually all of this data right here, all of this information went into their sensory memory, but it decayed very rapidly. And if you could ask them for the report and focus their attention on a particular part of it, they could recall it fairly accurately within an extremely short amount of time. So this kind of helped us to see that in the visual field, sensory memory, basically everything goes in. It decays very rapidly. Only that to which you pay attention remains.